Because most people say you could have sued, you could have done
And
this,
I
and
think
you
you
might
can
still
count that
sue.
that's coming down the road.
You are going to sue.
Caused irreparable harm to my family. He has called my wife a murderer. He has called me complicity to murder. He has called me a liar. He has slandered my relationship with my daughter, Patsy's relationship with JonBenet. He did that in a public forum, which is reprehensible, and it needed to be addressed in a public forum.
Okay, going to look at this interview with Steve Thomas, and essentially Steve Thomas and John and Patsy going at each other's neck on Larry King. Just want to see this and kind of get a better idea about if there's any beef between, well, obviously there's going to be beef between two. They don't like Steve Thomas, but we'll see.
Tonight, a first in the JonBenet Ramsey homicide case. Her parents, John and Patsy, square off against former Boulder police detective Steve Thomas. He believes that Patsy killed her daughter on Christmas night 1996. It's exclusive. It's next on Larry King Live. They have been guests before on this program, never together. They are together tonight. They are Steve Thomas, the former Boulder police detective, author of JonBenet, Inside the Ramsey Murder Investigation, and John and Patsy Ramsey, the parents of the late JonBenet Ramsey. Their daughter, as we said, killed Christmas night 1996, and they're the authors of The Death of Innocence. Both of these books have been on the bestseller list, and this case has taken over this country and other parts of the world as well since its inception. Since last with us, the Ramseys took a lie detector test, not under FBI order, and your lawyer said that you didn't want the FBI to do it. Why?
We didn't necessarily not want the FBI to do it. We wanted someone who was fair and independent.
Do you think the FBI would have been partial, Patsy? I mean, do you think the FBI cares?
I'm not saying that. I'm not accusing that at all. Just that was, not the definition of independence.
You think they come with a degree of opinion?
I don't know, but we eliminated that possibility by insisting they be independent. We went to the best polygrapher in the country, had the results quality controlled by the person who invented the polygraph system.
And he was going to release those results no matter what, right? That was a given understanding, that it would be made public no matter what he found.
The condition we agreed to.
Steve?
To be fair, this is what the police agreed to like a long time ago. They agreed to that. But John and Patsy didn't want to use the FBI agents as recommended by the BPD because they thought those FBI agents were partial and would not be impartial, that they would side with the BPD. Well, I'll be honest with you. Ron Walker was an individual who was with the FBI, and he kind of mentioned that, hey, got a call day one, and said you probably need to look at the parents, make sure that we do that. And so essentially the Boulder Police Department was receiving like the backing and the consultation of the FBI. And so it's possible that there would have been something that the FBI in relation to BPD would have been looking more and saying, no, we still have things that we need to look at to be specific. When you do it the way that John and Patsy told their independent individuals to do, you come in cold turkey with no indication of what needs to be known in the case. And this was the problem with the grand jury. They're supposed to be trying to get to know something. There are very specific things that we're trying to get to know. We're trying to talk to Burke more, and we're trying to talk to the Ramseys more. And we're trying to talk to people around the Ramseys to understand more about them so we can get a better handle on the case. And essentially, as Chief Beckner put it, we want to compel these people to witness so we can get certain answers that they won't give us now. That's what the FBI and the BPD were trying to use their resources for. But John and Patsy were pushing back against that the entire time.
Did that appeal to you?
Well, it certainly didn't satisfy the Boulder Police Department. They are putting little stock in this polygraph, and quite frankly, it took Patsy, if I'm not mistaken, and I don't think I am, 3 tries to pass a polygraph. We had an inconclusive test, a second test that showed distortion, and finally, a third test with another examiner. She passed truthfully.
Was that examiner respected?
Certainly nobody's testing or challenging the credentials of the examiner, but again, it's not the government authorities who want to conduct that polygraph.
Let's go back a bit. You have not been together.
And to that point, I was going to say, and so he said it for me. I thought they took it twice, but he's saying they took it 3 times, and Patsy and John are not trying to defend themselves against that. So I guess they took it 3 times apiece, or Patsy took it 3 times. Inconclusive, distortion, and then finally you get the truth out. This is probably why they stayed on Patsy a lot, because if it's taken Patsy that long to pass a test for something that she didn't do, you took 3 times to pass the lie detector test. That's a red flag, period. Took you 3 times to do it. We're already running into problems. That's number 1. Number 2, it was inconclusive and distorted with somebody you picked, with somebody that came in cold turkey, just like you wanted. You didn't even include the cops. And this is what I'm saying. The triangulation. I said in my video about the forensics, the triangulation around Patsy. Something that Patsy is doing, just can't get it right. The pineapple, the tea, the clothes, the note, and now the polygraph test. Just cannot seem to shake it and get it away. Even down to putting other people in you're writing and putting other people in charge of certain things, and they're putting your word and stuff, and you're getting caught on it. And hence, boom, saw that in the ransom note, and you put it in a Christmas you put it in a memorial program for your daughter, and somebody caught it, said, and hence, boom. So more triangulation.
Since when? When was the last time?
April 30, 1997.
When you were still on the case?
Right.
Did you question them at that time? You both remember that?
Absolutely.
Okay. And you were taken off the case?
I resigned from the Boulder Police Department in the summer of 1998.
Because of this case?
Absolutely.
And you resigned because?
Because I felt that Patsy is involved in this death, in this tragedy, and I felt it had become such a debacle and was going nowhere. Out of frustration, I left the case in police work.
John, why did you agree to come on with Steve
Well,
tonight? I mean, this is rather historic. I'm trying to remember if there's ever been television like
as
this.
a police officer, has caused irreparable harm to my family. He has called my wife a murderer. He has called me a complicity to murder. He has called me a liar. He has slandered my relationship with my daughter, Patsy's relationship with JonBenet. He did that in a public forum, which is reprehensible, and it needed to be addressed in a public forum.
Because most people say you could have sued, you could have done
And
this,
I think
and you
can
might still
count
sue.
that's coming down the road.
You are going to sue.
Yes,
But
you
you
can count on it.
decided, Patsy, did you wholeheartedly agree to come? Or did any of you dispute coming here tonight?
No, not a bit.
You felt you wanted to confront this.
Absolutely, it's time.
Is it difficult for you to sit in Steve's presence?
It's not pleasant. This man has harmed us deeply. He's failed in his responsibilities as a police officer. He's failed us. He's failed JonBenet. He's failed the community of Boulder. It's not pleasant. No.
Steve,
Well,
how do you
let's
respond?
talk about failure. Let's talk about parents who I feel have failed their daughter, who
after this became a homicide, of course they cooperated when it was a kidnapping, but after it became a homicide, Patsy, you waited 4 months before you came in and talked to the Boulder Police Department.
For them things.
No, Steve, I did not.
Well, tell me when. I was there every day. Tell me how many hours.
Were you in our home that day?
How many hours?
Were you in our home the day
Let's
JonBenet
read
was
some
missing?
How many hours?
press
did you
releases
spend?
here, Steve.
Rather than talk over each other. You say they didn't appear. You say you did appear with the Boulder Police. And how would he not
At the,
know
at
about
the
it?
Boulder Police
He
Department. I
wasn't
don't
there
remember
that
you
day.
there.
Oh, you weren't there. You weren't there the day they came.
What day did you
You were
come to the
not
Boulder
Listen,
Police
there.
Department?
let's deal with facts. December 27th, 1997, Commander Eller released a press release. The family has been cooperative and our investigations continuing. December 29th, 1996, the family
You meant
continues
96,
I meant
right?
96, sorry. The family continues to cooperate with the police investigation, although police have not yet conducted interviews with the father and mother. They have been in no condition to be interviewed up to this point. We spent days with the police. We gave them everything they asked for.
What days was that, John?
Well, let's talk about it. It was the 26th. It was the
Before-
27th.
before
it
there
was
was
the
a homicide.
28th. We gave
He's saying
blood
right
And
samples.
let me respond, Larry. When he says they came in on the 28th, they came in to give what's called non-testimonial evidence.
Right.
They knew through their lawyers, I'm sure, that. And let me finish, John. May I finish,
Yes, you may.
please?
Go ahead.
They had no alternative. They had to come in on the 28th. On the 27th, two detectives went to their house to schedule an interview. They didn't speak with Patsy. They asked when they could arrange to come in. Let's cut to the chase here. You waited until April 30th
Let's
of
really
1997,
cut to the
Mr.
chase,
Ramsey.
Steve
Let
Thomas.
me cut to the
Let's
chase.
cut to the chase. What is your theory? Tell us your.
Nope. 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 John just deflected. And you just told me something. You just told me while you're telling us that the police didn't do a dang thing and aren't doing anything, I was wondering if John was aware of those press releases. And he is. And he was. So John is just admitted to staying abreast of the press releases that the police have been putting out. And he actively tried to spin the press release. Steve Thomas just said, you and your wife did not come in for 4 months until April 30th of 1997. John rebuttals or retorts and says, yes, we did. It's not about us coming in. We are cooperating. He's loading up a lot. He's putting a lot of weight on the word cooperation. So he's trying to make you think on national television that they cooperated. And he's using that in place of came down and gave an interview. Steve Thomas said you didn't come down and give an interview. John said we cooperated, to make it seem as if they hadn't yet been asked to give an interview. So Steve Thomas followed up, and I'm glad he did it. And I'm sorry for pausing it, but I'm glad he did it because I was about to explain the same thing. Steve Thomas was saying, no. You came in and did what you were required to do. You were required to give blood and hair samples. That's the only reason you came in. And then John pointed out, I don't know why he pointed this out. He said, they came and said that we don't have to come in here, or we didn't come in here. And of course not. Of course we didn't come in here because, we were in no position. Why would you point that out? That does not help your case. That again points to the fact that you did not come in. You are grieving, as the press release said. There is nothing being hidden there. The press release said, we are not going to bring the Ramseys in. I think it was on like the 28th or 29th. We're not going to bring them in because, number one, they said they're in no position to do so. Secondly, John had said, or the Ramseys had said, and you can go back and look at the press releases on the internet. The Ramseys said, we are not coming down. We have no intention of coming down and speaking to you at the police department before our daughter's funeral. That's what they said. And then that's why we say, and they promptly went, that funeral was on New Year's, on New Year's Eve, and on New Year's Day, they promptly went to CNN. They promptly went to CNN and did their first interview, knowing good and dang well that the cops had come by and knocked on the door and say, hey, can we talk to you for a second? And John and Patsy ran to Atlanta and stayed in Atlanta, knowing that the cops were coming up to Atlanta, asking for interviews. John and Patsy ran to Atlanta and said, where's the CNN building? Can anybody help me find the CNN? There it goes. We'll give you an interview for a little cash. Come on. And they went on television without going and talking to the police. And they knew, and John is now aware, you just told me you were aware that you knew that the cops wanted to talk to you and you ignored them anyway. They were waiting for you. And you went to Atlanta and you didn't come back and talk to them like you should have, and you knew you should have. You had your lawyer strapped up, but you came back and you ignored him anyway. Okay. Not a smart move at all. Not a smart move at all. You just starting off bad.
Your theory directly to our
I think it's
face.
fair to say that.
And then he did not answer the question of why are you avoiding the cops? He switched and said, what's your theory? So we've already skipped to get him out of the hot seat.
You certainly approached this impartially, one would assume. You didn't know the Ramseys, right? You didn't know JonBenet, you didn't know anyone connected.
Right.
When did you come to the conclusion you came to, and that conclusion is what?
Well, despite what the Ramseys assert, that it was the 26th, they now know I came into the case, was called into the case 2 days later. It was probably spring of 97 or later when evidence continued to come back indicating Patsy's involvement in the authorship of the ransom note 1. But let's cut to the chase, John. Let's make a very important distinction here. A dead child, your child, was found in your basement for which you could not offer a satisfactory explanation. And if I can finish, please.
Let him finish his theory.
You could not offer.
I'd like to hear the theory.
Yeah, you could not offer a satisfactory explanation. You resisted coming into the police department and asking questions or being subjected to questions by the detectives working this case. I didn't have a dead child found in my basement and resisted the police. No, not at all. Do we want to get into evidence?
I want you to get into your
Let's
theory.
talk.
Let me
Let's
hear-
talk evidence.
Let
me
me
get a-
hear
Let's
your
hear the
theory.
theory.
Let me,
Please.
let me get a break, and since we don't have anybody arrested in this, we don't have a trial, we're sort of taking you into evidence here. I feel like it's law and order. Your evidence will be presented to the Ramseys. They can respond, and we'll do it right after this. We're back. Steve, theory.
Well, theory, I hope we get a chance to talk about their convoluted kidnapper turned murderer theory, but I think it's very simple. And
We'll get their theory. I want your theory. What's your theory?
my theory is quite simple. Whoever authored the ransom note killed a child, absent some great conspiracy that they think this intruder came into the house.
Would you agree that whoever authored the ransom note probably killed the child?
I would agree.
I would
100%.
agree with that.
Okay, now, your contention is she wrote the note.
I
What do
do.
you base that on?
I do. I base that on questions.
Let's
You
talk
would have
about the
let her
73
answer the
suspects.
question, John.
Steve,
Why
you
won't
have
you let your
assaulted
wife
my
answer the
wife
question?
because you have assaulted her. You've called her a murderer. You have checked 73 suspects and said because Patsy's handwriting was the only one that couldn't be eliminated, therefore she is a murderer. That is absurd. You would have.
Here again, John Ramsey admits that 73 other individuals have been looked at other than them. 73. John has been telling you this entire time that the cops didn't look at anybody else except them from day one. And yet here he stands and says, you guys looked at 73 other people. No, we did not come in to be interviewed. And yes, you guys did look at 73 other people other than us. Getting caught in your lies.
Why did you
check
change your
6
handwriting
billion
post-homicide?
people.
handwriting
Why
is
would question document experts and people who looked at the ransom note suggest that you changed handwriting habits after the homicide?
We have not heard that. That is not what our experts
I-
have said.
Can Patsy answer the question, Mr. Ramsey?
Did you
If you're
change?
going to continue to assault her, I
Well,
will
no,
continue to answer
Well,
the
she
questions.
came on the show tonight. I'm assuming she's capable of answering
She's
questions.
very
Yep.
capable of answering
All right.
I
questions.
still haven't heard the theory yet. I
Well,
totally
he
agree that
believes you wrote
whoever wrote this ransom note killed our daughter. Yes, I concur wholeheartedly.
No, he believes you
Now
wrote the
let's
note.
hear what I want to hear is how is it exactly that you think that I killed my daughter?
What's the
I
motive?
just cannot understand that. I want to.
They're not answering questions. They just avoided another question. He's saying, Patsy, it looks like you were pinned for the ransom note, and they don't have a rebuttal to that. They just switch and say, "What's your theory?" That's irrelevant. My theory is that whoever wrote this did the killing. That's my theory in basis. Patsy, you have been pinned for the ransom note. She jumps back in and says, "What's your theory?" But also, John jumps in with this bull crap and starts saying that Steve Thomas is assaulting Patsy. He does that same crap when his kids had to go sit in front of the grand jury. When they had to go sit in front of the grand jury, and there's like, "Oh my God, bless your heart. Bless your little heart for having to go sit in front of the grand jury and answer questions about your dead sister." My God, we are trying to solve a crime here. And you're crying, talking about, "Oh my God, I've been assaulted." In what way? In what way have they assaulted you? They're asking me questions about JonBenet. They're trying to solve JonBenet's murder. Are you kidding me, bro? Are you kidding me? Assault? How? John was like, "Oh man, my kids had to sit through that, and I was angry because I, as a father, couldn't protect them." What the heck are you talking about? What kind of hero complex is this? When you realize people are only asking questions, they're not hemming people up in a corner and jacking them up and putting them against the wall and turning them around and telling them, "Put your hands behind your back." They're just saying, "I'd like to ask you a couple of questions." And John and Patsy are calling it assault. Mainly John. Steve Thomas is asking questions. And you see the way he's asking questions. He's not going at anybody. He's not talking crazy. This is how he's asking questions. And John is leaning forward and saying, "You're assaulting my wife. I'm not going to sit here. As long as you assault my wife, I'm going to ask you questions. Why are you getting in my, why are you allowing me? Why are you telling me to ask questions and asking me what I think, and I'm giving you my theory? First of all, you're interrupting me. And when I tell you what I think, you cut me off and you say I'm assaulting your wife." John, that's not the definition of assault. It's not. We thought Patsy was dramatic. John is dramatic and over the top. This is ignorant.
Hear it from start to finish.
Patsy,
Tell me
I wasn't
exactly
there.
what
You
happened.
were home that night, and apparently you say you
Tell
can't
me what
you
happened,
can't say for
Mr.
certainty you were in the house, right?
Yes,
Am I
certainly was.
assuming that's-
Answer my question, please.
Well,
Certainly.
he wasn't there, so he can't know for
He has a
certain.
theory.
He has
He's
to have a
accused
theory.
us
All
of
right.
murder.
Yeah,
What is your
you've
theory?
heard the theory.
I have not heard the theory.
Offered a
Please-
hypothesis.
Please answer my question.
I'm trying
Wait a
to,
minute.
John.
Your theory is
My theory is that Patsy, in a violent confrontation with her daughter,
accidentally killed her.
no, not accidental. I hypothesize in the sense that it lacked motive, not unlike
No motive.
accidental in that sense.
Mhm.
Excuse me, John.
Okay,
Did you have
okay.
something else?
I've got lots of
Go
those,
ahead.
but
Yeah.
go ahead.
At that point, instead of making a right turn, she made a left turn and covered this up. It's not unlike 11,000 other children that have been murdered in this country or killed feloniously by parents in the last 20 years. I don't see this as that remarkable a case other than what it became.
If it's
He's bringing facts. Said 11,000 other children. If you want to know why we're looking at you, this is why we're looking at you. Because there's 11,000 other children who have been killed by their parents. So I would look at 11,000 other cases, grab a handful and say, dang, this is similar. Can we look at this? Is there something similar going on the same way? That's good police work. That's good police work. Period. And while you're asking the man to give you a theory, he's doing it and you're interrupting him. I don't know why you're doing that. Shut up.
It's this pat, as you say, and it's the way you make it, it's kind of pat. Why has no action been taken against this
Because
couple?
his theory is contradicted irrefutably by the forensic evidence.
Is that right, John? Now, why don't you tell us
Fine,
this
what is
convoluted
Allow me to
kidnapper?
answer the question, please, Steve.
What's the opposite?
JonBenet, we have had some of the world's best forensics experts look at the evidence. They have told us that JonBenet was the last act this creature did to our daughter was a vicious blow to the head. That is irrefutable.
That's not consistent with
That is not consistent with your theory, and that's my point.
right. But you're suggesting, if I am hearing you correctly, and let me ask you, why will you not take the FBI polygraph?
Don't change the subject. Steve.
I'll
Come
get
on,
back.
get off.
I'll get back.
Okay.
Come
Deal
on.
with it. Deal with it.
Don't change the subject. Stay on topic. Stay consistent. I feel like Steve should have had a better handle on the forensics. Because if Steve had a better handle on the forensics, I'm not saying he didn't read them, but if he would have had a better handle on the forensics, John is talking about the autopsy report, not necessarily the forensics. If John knew what he was talking about when he was talking about the forensics, John would have mentioned that, or he would have known that Patsy and Burke were included in touching JonBenet's garments. He would have known that. He probably, when he brought that up, he would have known better. So, a blow to the head, of course. Now, what Steve could have argued, if he just really wanted to, saying like a blow to the head, he could have argued, well, a blow to the head in that, this is consistent with, you flying into a rage and, you're kind of doing your daughter this way or this way, da-da-da. He could have argued that. That would have been consistent. And that would have went with his theory. If I believed, and I don't necessarily agree with Steve Thomas here, but if I were to believe Steve Thomas, that would have been a little bit of my theory. That's where I would have gone.
Topic at hand. We're dealing with big issues
Let's
here.
hear your theory. Let's hear your theory.
You have
Let's hear
accused
your
us
theory,
of
Mr.
murder.
Ramsey. I'm waiting.
I
I'm
Let's hear your
intend-
theory.
waiting for you to finish.
Right.
Tell me exactly.
You have
Let's hear
accused
your
us of
theory, Mr.
murder.
Ramsey. I'm waiting. Let's
I
hear
I'm
your
intend-
theory.
waiting for you to finish.
Right.
Tell me exactly, step by step, how you
I
envision.
wasn't there,
that
Patsy. You were in the home
You
that
must
night.
have conjured something in your head for you to come out and call me a murderer of my child.
Patsy, I think
Now,
you
I
wrote
want to
the-
hear
I think you
one
wrote the
through
ransom.
10.
I think you heard.
When did
wrote
I
the
write
ransom
this
note.
ransom
You-
note?
You
Before or
tell
after
me
I
if you
killed
wrote the
him?
ransom
No,
note.
you're the one theorizing here. You tell me.
You were in the house that night.
Steve,
And
you have a
and John,
theory.
you can't say for
Well,
certain.
actually,
who-
it's circumstantial.
Yeah,
Next.
and John, you can't say for certain who did or did not kill JonBenet because you have said you were asleep. You cannot say for certain because you weren't there.
I want to hear your theory, Steve. Let me ask you this: are you prepared?
What was that laugh for? Like, just answer the question. He said he challenged you. You can't say for certain because you said you were asleep. John laughed. He was like, it's like, what was that laugh? Can you say for certain or not? Can you talk to me? Can you or not? It was like, I don't want to go there. Let's go somewhere else. Now who's changing? So the same thing that you just got mad at Steve for doing, you're doing the same thing essentially. Secondly, the Ramseys, if you listen to them, they don't really have it. I don't think Steve Thomas had a full-on game plan here, but neither did the Ramseys. The Ramseys don't have a game plan because they keep asking Steve Thomas his theory, and he already told them his theory. But they ask him again and again and again his theory. So they're not at all well prepared either.
To state that Patsy killed JonBenet, that I covered it up, and that you can prove that in a court of law? Are you prepared to say that
I've written a
tonight?
book, and I stand by my book.
Your book said that.
My book stands on its own. I haven't heard this kidnapper murderer theory.
So you
I mean,
didn't
their
consider
theory.
all options.
You will say that in a court of law.
Certainly
when
we
you're taken
considered
to
options
suit.
in this case.
What do you, when you're a detective, this fascinates me. Do you guess as to motive when you're looking into a crime? Like, why was this child killed, for what purpose?
Certainly.
And in this case, you came to the conclusion that it was sort of in a rage.
Yeah, I don't think that there was any
Wasn't
premeditation
Let
to
me
this
ask you
child
this,
being
Steve.
killed. You're
What-
still not answering my
What
question.
in our
Mr. Ramsey.
background did you find? And our background has been investigated for 3.5 years. What in our background did you find that would show that we were capable of this horrible crime?
You play right into it. I don't show that there's a motive in this case. I don't suggest that.
I didn't ask my question. What did you find in our background that would demonstrate you were capable of this kind
Well,
of horrible
I
crime?
gave you a pass, John, unless you want to say otherwise. I don't think you were involved.
I'm asking
We
about
instead of we.
you accused Patsy of murder, me of
What
complicity.
in my past?
What in
have you
Patsy's past
seen
did
that
you
has
find?
ever indicated that I would be capable of doing something like this?
Well,
These 11,000 parents that you state.
I'll
Did
ask
they
you a
have a
question right
past?
back. You
I don't-
That's what I was going to say. Number one, the motive comes from our assessment of 11,000 parents who've done this before. Secondly, our motive comes from the fact that maybe you've had an issue. We've talked to Judith Phillips, and Judith Phillips has said you've fought with, JonBenet on these occasions. Thirdly, from what I can tell, you've authored the ransom note. Fourth, and because if we're talking about motivation, fourth, I said that I don't think this was premeditated. So it's not necessarily that there's a historical precedent. I'm not saying that there was a historical precedent that put this. I'm saying that you snapped. There would be no historical precedent for a snap. And that's what I'm saying. Now, if you're asking me to go back and say where there's signs, I might tell you signs in terms of you wanted her to be this way in her pageantry. We found this out through talking to people, or you treated her this way. You were slightly maybe abusive, or in this way, maybe verbally abusive. And then maybe that verbal abuse kind of spilled over into a physical abuse. And I might say things like that. I might go that direction if I was going down the line of logic that Steve Thomas was going. So I think Steve Thomas came ready to discuss, but I don't think he did enough to fully prepare his argument to kind of walk down the line, is what I'm thinking.
You suggest this great conspiracy
Answer.
involving.
Let me
I'm
get
trying
a
to answer
let me
the
get a break.
question.
Let me get a break, and then we'll have to have more direct questions
He
and
never
answers.
answers the question.
All right, we'll be right back with Steve Thomas and the Ramseys. Don't go away. Is the key to this what you're saying? The note? That's the whole key.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I've heard Patsy Ramsey say on national television that even their own experts cannot eliminate her as the author of the note. And a follow-up question to that is, she says there's people who rate higher on that scale who are potential suspects. And I'd ask you, who are these
None of your
people?
business, Steve, because you're
Of
no
course
longer a police
it's
detective.
not.
Let me ask you
I'm a
to answer
citizen,
the
and I'm
question.
asking you why you're not going to the Boulder Police Department.
Your contention is it is based on your belief she wrote the note.
Primarily,
So 2 plus 2 equals 4.
primarily, yes, sir.
Answer my question. What in Patsy's background did you find?
For the sake of argument, if I were John, I would have listed like 3 people. You stonewalling and saying it's none of your business, that's a cop out. Answer the man. You guys are always so gung-ho to be like, oh, you guys didn't look at anybody else. We have people that you need to look at. For example, you need to look at this. But John knows he can't sit there and call these people's name out on national television. You better not. But they turn around and be like, you what? Defamation. So he'll go in and say, none of your business. We have 3 people. And what he should have gone on and said, we've sent them, because Steve came back and said, have you sent them to the Boulder Police? Now, John and his team, his legal team, they set up a tip line. I don't think, and these were individuals who were calling their tip line. I don't think they filtered who they wanted to filter, is what you have the opportunity to do. When you have your tip line, you filter who you want to filter. I think they said, like, at some point in time, like very soon within the process, that tip line that John Ramsey set up, or the firm that he was being represented by, that tip line was defunct very quickly. I don't know that, but that's what I've heard. And so you can take that off the table, take it with a grain of salt, whatever you want to do. Let's just erase it from the record. But the fact of the matter is, you guys have a tip line where people can call in and you filter where you want the cops to go. Not necessarily what they're looking for, but you filter and say, hey, we think these guys did it. Go after these guys. Right? Steve is asking, did you turn that list over to the cops? And John was like, don't worry about it. It's not your business.
That would cause you to believe that she could commit this horrible act.
Well, I'll pose this, and
Answer
absent,
the
Okay, no,
question,
all right, well,
please.
let him try. Go ahead.
I can't get 3 words out.
Okay.
Answer the question. Don't
Let
answer
me
the question.
pose this. Why then, absent this great conspiracy that you suggest,
Please.
would these pediatric experts come in?
Please answer the question, Steve.
Well, wait a minute. All right, let's.
Fair is
Can,
fair.
can I
right?
ask a
You see that?
question? And
Yeah, I
have
know,
an
but
answer?
where someone could not have a background and still do something violent one day.
Very, very unlikely.
You mean
Ac-
if this
according-
person commits violence, they have committed it before? Is that
In a
according to your theory?
parental
Most probably.
abuse situation, in virtually all of the cases, there
There
is a
has been.
history of abuse that's known by the parents, by the authorities, by the social services agencies.
Was a thorough investigation
It-
done of the Ramseys and their children?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
why would pediatric medical experts that the Boulder Police Department brought into this case swear out via affidavit that JonBenet had been subjected to prior
That's
vaginal
a lie.
trauma?
You're lying,
wait a
Steve.
minute.
That is
Are
a
you-
So I had to go look this up and understand. There's an article called Re-Reporting and Recurrence of Child Maltreatment Findings from NCANDS Research Summary. And that's at ASPE, Office of the Assistant Secretary for Planning and Evaluation. That's at aspe.hhs.gov.gov. Once again, that's aspe.hhs.gov. And essentially kind of looking, and we're looking at the re-reporting and recurrence of child maltreatment. And we're looking at the results or the findings. And from what I can tell, of the 1.3, 1.4 million children initially reported to the CPS, 32% were the subject of a second report within 60 months. Okay. Of the 336,000 victims, 17% became victims again within 60 months. Subsequent events, whether re-reporting or recurrence, were much more likely to occur soon after the initial report. For example, 16% of children were re-reported during the first 12 months, but it took until the end of the study periods, 5 years, for the re-report rate to double to 32%. Similarly, 8% of children recurred within the first 12 months, but an additional 3 years was needed before this percentage doubled to 17%. So essentially, they looked at 1.4 million kids who had been initially reported to CPS for this abuse, and 32% of those were subjected to a second report within 5 years. And so if we go back,
Boulder Police Department brought into this case swear out via affidavit that JonBenet had been subjected to prior
That's a
vaginal
lie.
trauma.
You're lying,
Wait a
Steve.
minute.
That is
Are
a
you-
lie.
are
You're saying they didn't say that?
Our
Boulder Police Department brought it.
If this
according-
person commits violence, they have committed it before? Is that
according to your theory?
parental,
Most probably.
Go ahead.
I can't get 3 words out.
Okay.
answer the question. Don't
Let
answer
let
the
me
question.
pose this. Why then, absent this great conspiracy that you suggest,
Please,
would these pediatric experts come in?
please answer the question, Steve.
Well, wait a minute. All right, let's.
Fair is fair.
Can I
right?
ask a
You see that?
question? and
Yeah, I
have
know,
an
but
answer?
someone could not have a background and still do something violent.
Very, very unlikely.
You mean
Ac-
if this
according-
person commits violence, they have committed it before? Is that?
You know,
And so basically, John is saying that it's highly unlikely that a person who commits this hasn't done it before. And what I'm looking at is 32%. So 100 minus 32, 68% of the time, according to this article, 68% of the time, like individuals who have not been, you have individuals who have not been reported and essentially having a history, right? 68% of the time, these individuals, and let me make sure I'm not just, misreading it. Those initially reported 32% of the time, they were called back. So 32% of the time, if you got called in the first time, 32% of the time you would hear about it. Right? So basically, sometimes it may be reported, sometimes it's initially reported and you hear about it again 32% of the time. So 68% of the time you don't hear about it again. Right? So it may happen and go to CPS, or it may not happen. Or it may not be taken to CPS and we may never know. You see what I'm saying? So there could be no history. So that's bullcrap for John to be like, oh, there's history there. It's got to be the majority of the time. You're just saying that. You don't have any stats for that. You don't even back up. You don't even back up for that. You're just on television saying your beliefs. You see what I'm saying? Like, if no one questions you and stops you, you're just saying your beliefs. That's not necessarily true, dude.
According to your theory.
parental
Most probably.
abuse situation, in virtually all of the cases, there
There
is a
has been.
history of abuse that's known by the parents, by the authorities, by the social services agencies.
Was a thorough investigation
And-
done of the Ramseys and their children?
Yeah, absolutely. And why would pediatric medical experts that the Boulder Police Department brought into this case swear out via affidavit that JonBenet had been subjected to prior?
Lying,
Wait a
Steve.
minute.
That is
Are-
a
are
lie.
You're saying they didn't say that?
Our pediatrician, who saw JonBenet a dozen times each year for the past 3 years before this happened, has sworn and testified in public that he saw no evidence.
Pediatrician saw.
Well, not my pediatrician,
Well,
pediatric experts that were
said-
brought into this case.
Who are they,
The
please,
Blue
Steve?
Ribbon Medical Panel.
Can I ask
Said-
who they are?
wait a minute.
That is
Are-
a lie.
are you-
You're saying they didn't say that?
Our pediatrician, who saw JonBenet a dozen times each year for the past 3 years before this happened, has sworn and testified in public that he saw no evidence.
Pediatrician saw.
Well, not my pediatrician,
Well,
pediatric experts that were
said-
brought into this case.
Who are they,
The
please,
Blue
Steve?
Ribbon Medical Panel.
Can I ask you who
Said-
they are?
Said
Said that this little girl, prior to the night she died, had been subjected to previous.
But I ask
That
who they
is
are
a
because this
lie.
is in the same category as his so-called linguistics expert who he brought in and testified
but
that
we could
Patsy.
ask you, what's his motive? What do you think? Why?
I
you,
think his
you think
motive-
he's out to
JonBenet essentially went to the doctor for 3 years. She went to the doctor like once a month. Is that normal? Why would JonBenet be going to the doctor? Why would JonBenet be going to the doctor once a month for 3 years? Like, is that normal? Secondly, Steve Thomas was just simply saying, we brought in a panel of pediatricians and they said that there was prior trauma. John said that that's not true. John, you don't know if that's true or not. And then John counters by saying, our pediatrician said differently. That's okay, but it doesn't make what Steve Thomas is saying untrue. What they're saying is, and this is going to the fact that the Boulder police continue to stand on the fact that they're bringing in outside help. John continues to try to knock that down and say, no, you didn't. You didn't bring in any other outside help. And the cops continue to tell you, yes, we did. This is one of the things that we tried to be thorough in trying to bring in outside individuals to kind of help us. They did the same thing with some lawyers to kind of help them with the case. So that point that John just made about bringing his pediatrician, that made it even a little bit weirder, because it's just like, why is your daughter going to the doctor like once a month? It kind of makes you ask, how much of a problem child was JonBenet in terms of health? Like, legitimately, how was her health? You see what I'm saying? Like, I feel like that's what's getting lost. JonBenet was picture perfect for the camera, but how was her health? I don't think that you should be going to the doctor once a month for 3 years. I don't know anybody who I grew up with who did that, who didn't have some sort of legitimate health issue that needed to be monitored. What legitimate health issue did JonBenet have that she was going back and forth to the doctor once a month for 3 years?
I think at this point he's a profiteer. He's the only person from inside the system who has written a book, who has gone on national television. It's disgraceful, absolutely disgraceful.
But he did quit his job over this, so obviously
Because he was headed down the wrong path. He was at the point of no return. And his ego is the size of a barn, and he can't put it aside
I don't
to
think
try
so,
to find
Patsy.
murder of his child.
Everybody's wrong but Lou Smith.
That's right. That's what it says in your book.
Everybody's wrong but Lou Smith. The FBI, federal law enforcement, the FBI polygraphy unit, state law enforcement, the governor of Colorado, the police detectives, the DA's office.
Did all of those people show all of their evidence to the grand jurors?
Let's remember, the grand jury did not exonerate you either.
It's not the grand jury's task to exonerate. Their task is to
I think the grand jury may have issued a report. You were the target of this grand jury.
No question.
You know it.
I know that.
Probable cause wasn't an issue. And Patsy tonight, I think I've heard her say she wished.
Oh, Steve was about to say it. Because Patsy and John were about to say that an indictment, nothing was returned. They weren't guilty. And that the grand jury didn't find anything on them. But Steve Thomas was like, a report would have been triggered if you guys had actually not been indicted on anything. A report would have been triggered. And since a report has not been triggered, that means that they indicted you, and he's correct.
She was arrested in this case.
well, because they feel it would be an end.
We've been tried in public by innuendo and slander from people like you. Yes, God knows we would have loved to have had a fair trial.
I don't apologize for the book. I left a career, Larry, as you said. I wrote the book for the same reason that you did, to put information out publicly.
You wrote that book to line your pockets with money based on our tragedy.
That's not true. As a matter of fact, I think you wrote a book as well and took money for that.
It's going to charity. Tell me what you do with the money you're writing.
I think you've also said it's going to illegal.
I know that.
Probable cause wasn't an issue. And Patsy tonight, I think I've heard her say she wished she was arrested in this case.
Well, because they feel it would be an end.
We've been tried in public by innuendo and slander from people like you. Yes, God knows we would have loved to have had a fair trial.
I don't apologize for the book. I left a career, Larry, as you said. I wrote the book for the same reason that you did, to put information out publicly.
You wrote that book to line your pockets with money based on our tragedy.
That's not true. And as a matter of fact, I think you wrote a book as well and took money for that.
It's going to charity. Tell me what you do with the money you're writing.
I think you've also said it's going to a legal defense fund.
On the other side, you said that one of the reasons this case is unsolved is him.
Absolutely.
Why?
Because he failed miserably in the the task he was given. He was inexperienced. He didn't accept help from people.
You
who know
think
what
he
to
had
do.
the
He jumped
opportunity to solve
conclusions.
it at that point?
I think experienced homicide investigators could have solved this case by now.
You know,
The
it's not
FBI's
all
the
Steve
FBI's
Thomas's fault. You know, it is not all this young man's fault. He did not have good leadership in his department to lead him down a path of experience. You know, you can't fault the man for that, truly.
Can you understand,
I
Patsy,
can
why
understand
you were
that.
suspects?
I
you
can
understand that? They cut in
understand
your
because
house.
there was no one, truly.
Can you understand, Patsy,
I can
why you
understand
were
that.
suspects?
I
you
can
understand that? They cut in
understand
your
because
house.
there was no one leading this man with any leadership capability to investigate the homicide of a young child. I understand that. I know the first time that I interviewed with then Detective Thomas, I saw the passion in the man's eyes. He wants to find the killer of this child. It's just that he's going down the wrong path. Now,
Your
what
husband was
I
angrier than you.
do, well, you know, I feel sorry for the man, truly. We know we're not guilty. He is convinced that we are. Now, I am sorry
Somebody's
for that.
wrong.
He has, his career
We know who
has
it is.
suffered.
Certainly
He's a young man. He was at, you know, very young in his career. He has lost his job. He doesn't even have a family yet, I don't believe. Perhaps you're married. God willing, if you ever have a child one day, you will know the pain, perhaps, when someone hands you the child in your arms and says, Mr. Thomas, this is
I think Steve Thomas was like 10 to 15 years in his career at this point. So Patsy's just talking like 10 to 15 years ain't the most, but it ain't the least. You can be like an SVP or be in the C-suite in 10 years. You can be in the C-suite in 10 years. In fact, in some cases, it's actually expected for you to be, in 5 years, they want you to be managerial, senior manager, stuff like that. So 10 years, they want you moving into the C-suite or SVP or something like that. So it's pretty solid. I don't know what Patsy, like, what are you talking about?
your child. Do you tell me that you're going to look at that child and you just had a new baby, Larry? Could you ever conceive
I can't
of
imagine how anyone
doing
could harm a child.
something to
beyond
this child, let alone
I'm
the
sure it's
things
beyond
that
belief
this
to you,
man
too, right?
is
I mean, beyond that anyone could harm a child.
Of course.
No, that's.
It happens
I
every
want
day,
to see the
unfortunately.
day
Let me get a break and come
that
back.
he has a child.
We'll be back with more. We'll also include your phone calls. Don't go away.
So I'm going to stop it right there. We're at almost about an hour, but I'll come back and kind of continue to assess and analyze and see what we can find. So thanks for watching. Thanks for supporting. Until next time, like, share, subscribe, comment. Let me know what you think thus far. Till next time, take it easy.